There's nothing more American than barbecue.
North Carolina has two styles. In the east,
Memphis is most known for barbecue ribs,
whole hog barbecue,
brisket,
burnt end,
rib tips.
I use my style.
So where does American barbecue come from?
Does this look okay?
I can't see you.
Oh, I didn't click start video. That would help. Okay, there we go.
This is my colleague, Kristen Aiken. She's a senior editor covering food and drink at HuffPost, and she's a big fan of barbecue.
I think my favorite type of barbecue is Kansas City style barbecue.
While Kristen acknowledges that there's all kinds of barbecue, the actual definition of barbecue is
Complicated, but I think what we're talking about today is the verb, like I'm going to barbecue some meat. And that's referring to the low and slow method of cooking meat.
Simply put, barbecue is
Meat plus smoke plus a long time.
Another element to that equation is region, characterized by
Mostly two things, the cuts of meat that they serve and the sauce.
For example, in South Carolina, they're known for whole hog barbecue,
And they're really famous for their mustard sauce. It's called Carolina Gold.
while in Central Texas,
It's really just about smoked brisket, sliced plainly, no sauce, salt and pepper.
So to me, the regional differences speak to innovation.
this is Adrian Miller, a culinary historian and author. He's a book on barbecue coming out next year.
I'm wondering if you can just move over a little other way.
The other way?
Yeah.
According to Adrian, the history of barbecue in America predates the country itself.
You know, the story of barbecue is really it's Native American in origin. The Europeans encounter indigenous people in the Caribbean first, cooking in a way they really hadn't seen before. And it was essentially a raised platform with a very slow fire underneath it.
But in North America, indigenous people had their own smoking traditions. For example,
The indigenous people in what is now Texas were doing barbacoa, essentially digging a vertical hole, having a fuel source there, and layering vegetation and meat to cook it.
so fast forward to the 1700s, as barbecue develops into a cooking style, it gains popularity.
Enslaved Native Americans were actually the first barbecue cooks because the way that barbecue was made at that time was very labor intensive. And the ethics of whites at that time was if there's hard work to be done, we're going to get somebody else to do it. Now, once Native American slavery was no longer viable, slaveholding whites decided to transition to African slavery. Then you get enslaved Africans becoming barbecue's primary cooks.
This continued through the 19th century.
These African American chefs bore that out over centuries, sometimes over harsh conditions, inhumane conditions.
In fact, it isn't until the late 20th century when we start to see
White men being celebrated more for barbecue than African Americans. And the African Americans, they're not considered craft people, right? Even though what they're doing is a craft, they're just considered, these artists who are doing something menial that has delicious results.
which brings us to today.
Sadly, African Americans do not get as much love in barbecue as they should.
It's mad people who came here and did this before me, that laid the foundation. And there's a lot that don't get the recognition.
This is Brian Furman. He calls himself a barbecue cook.
My grandmother, I learned how to cook from my mom, my grandma, and my dad, and none of them are chefs or none of them are pit masters, and they just rely on calling themselves cooks, so I just think I'm a great cook.
And this is Terrence Big Perm Nicholson, owner of Zilla's Pit Barbecue in Nashville, Tennessee.
My family has been blessed to live on a farm in Brownsville, Tennessee for over a century right now. So whenever I think about when I'm cooking, I always look back on that lineage and that heritage that they have.
To Big Perm and Brian, barbecue isn't just about food. It's about honoring its history and preserving its future.
Because it's so many out there that nobody know about. If you look up how many pit masters or black pit masters in America, and it was like 19. And I'm like, 19? America? Like, are you serious?
According to Big Perm, while black pitmasters have always existed, their stories and contributions are often ignored.
Way that I view African American pitmasters, I view them as really some unsung heroes. They put out wonderful product, they put out consistently good product. It's just no one's giving them that opportunity to shine outside of their neighborhoods. I feel like a lot of African American pit masters have to go well above and beyond to make sure they are spotlighted.
Which is why it's Brian's dream to open a series of barbecue pop-up restaurants across the country.
I feel like we're in high demand now. We've always been in high demand. Nobody just knew about it. It's bad that it takes killings like this to happen for the national attention to come. I just want to go and do these pop-ups with these other black chefs and these other black pit masters to let them know, like, hey, this is where we're supposed to be at.